Phil Heath reveals to Jay Cutler his steroid use from the past. Coach Greg, and for the first time, Phil Heath reveals to Jay Cutler his steroid use from the past. In it, he describes how he used to compete natural, how he was beating everyone, and how he never abused PEDs.
People have a misconception of what genetics are. What, in your eyes, like, are genetics like structure? Is it?
And so what exactly are great genetics? Phil Heath has one of the best, if not the best physique of all time. And why is that? Is it the PEDs? Is it the training, the diet, the nutrition? Genetics? Well, of course, it's a combination of everything. But when we're speaking genetics, what exactly is it? Is it staying lean, the ability to put on muscle, to tolerate the PEDs that you need to get to that level, to have better digestion, to have wide clavicles, a small waist, to continue to put on muscle when most people would stop? Is it perhaps your ethnicity, a certain quality of skin, how your muscles actually look once you're shredded, or perhaps being able to pump up and look good while flexing? And well, obviously, it's a combination of every freaking thing you can think of. And so when we speak of genetics, it's how many of all of those things do you have all rolled into one? And Phil Heath has almost all of them to the highest degree, and that's why he was able to look so amazing.
You know, I don't have like a long torso like some of the other guys. I think genetically, bone structure-wise, even though I wasn't the widest guy, the cells, I was always bubbly.
And so in all sports, as it is in bodybuilding, it has a lot to do with limb length. And I think by that he means your skeletal structure that allows your muscles to look a certain way. And so if you have really wide clavicle bones, your shoulders are going to appear much wider. Look at Chris Bumstead or Derek Lunsford. Look at how wide their shoulders are in relation to their waist. And so if you have the right bone structure, the muscles that you add on top of that, it's going to look amazing. And to the opposite degree, look at Chris Bumstead's biceps in comparison to Phil Heath. Chris Bumstead's biceps, very weak. The biceps, the muscle belly itself, doesn't look good. It's not attached in the right spot to allow him to have the biggest, most amazing looking arms. But he makes up for it with the rest of his physique. And so with Phil Heath, all of his muscle bellies, they looked absolutely amazing.
But I think moving from Seattle to Denver, having that high altitude training as a basketball player and then converting that into bodybuilding, it was the perfect match for me.
I'm going to tell you right now, Phil Heath moving to a higher altitude to allow him to have more red blood cells had absolutely nothing to do with how his physique looks. And listen, people, you can't just do altitude training or play basketball and think, oh, I have the perfect foundation. Now I'm going to be a professional bodybuilder. It has nothing to do with it. Those are environmental factors, nothing to do with your genetics. So when you speak of how you're training in basketball, you're playing defense, you're in a low squat position all the time, that's not going to affect how you ultimately can look in your 30s on a Mr. Olympia stage.
Playing Division I basketball and running all the time and doing a lot of that work.
The stimulation.
You know, the stimulation of being a defensive, like I was always in the defense. So like.
And so no, running a lot as a kid, as many people say, does not lead to being a successful bodybuilder. You hear it all the time. Oh, I owe my bodybuilding to when I was growing up, playing soccer all the time, running. It allowed me to have amazing quads. No, it wasn't. It was your genetics. It just happened to be that because you looked so amazing that your muscles grew while running. Most people who run are not going to have Phil Heath looking quads. And whether you're playing basketball, badminton, cycling, whatever, if you end up with amazing looking muscles, it's because of your genetics. Of course, the training that you did helped, but ultimately it's down to your genetics.
I was never pushing PEDs like right away. I was competing naturally.
Now, this is an important point that he brought up. When I was younger and had first started competing, I did it 100% natural. He didn't join the gym and immediately take PEDs. He also, when he first started competing, doing his first show, he was 100% natural, beating everyone, winning overalls against people who were taking steroids. And you're thinking, I don't believe it. I saw that photo of him with Jay Cutler. No way could you achieve that physique natural. Well, 99.9999% of people could not, but he could. And so I 100% believe that he achieved that physique natural. After all, if you have amazing genetics, you can look phenomenal and be 100% natural. And then if at that point you add PEDs on top of it, well, guys like Phil Heath, Ronnie Coleman, Kai Green, how do you think they ended up putting on so much muscle? Well, even without PEDs, they were bigger than most IFBB pros. And so once they took the PEDs, they added on that much more size. In comparison, a guy like Chris Bumstead, who started taking PEDs at a young age, only 18 at his first show, He's already put on a ton of muscle. And so many people say, well, Chris should switch to open. He'd be 300 pounds. No, he wouldn't. He's already taken PDs. He's been taking them for close to 10 years. And so his genetic ceiling for size, if he were to take all the PDs in the world, well, it's not that much more. He couldn't simply snap his finger and show up 20 pounds bigger like Derek Lunsford. And so my advice, compete natural. At least at the beginning. See, how do you look without anything? If you look absolutely phenomenal, 100% natural, and you add PDs later on in life, you would not believe how much better you can become. But if you're taking PDs just to do your first show, well, do you really think you're going to have the same potential as Phil Heath?
You know, I think bodybuilding is a perfect sport, but my skin texture is what people don't realize.
And so his next point that he brings up is that he has amazing skin texture. And that's not only the color of the skin, also lack of blemishes. He doesn't have hardly any acne whatsoever, nor does he have stretch marks. And with that tan and translucent skin, very thin skin, he's able to properly display his muscles. Some guys have thicker skin. Even with the absence of body fat, the thin can be thicker than last time. And so if you have two competitors, one has thinner skin than the other, who do you think is going to look better? Also, he doesn't have a bunch of tattoos, and he doesn't have gross looking veins. Many people think, oh, look at all the veins. Veins doesn't win you a show. Quality, separated, and detailed muscle wins you shows. And so he says a lot of guys today, they're doing so many different shots, getting infections and so on, and so their skin doesn't look as good. They're perhaps abusing PDs. And consider this, if you're doing site injections, perhaps using synthol or other injections, is your muscle going to look as good? Probably not. If you can literally see a hole where the injection went in, where the oil may have gone, and it's swollen, inflamed, does that look good? Does that offer the best looking physique? And so what Phil Heath's saying is, I never used any of that stuff. I did not abuse PEDs.
But as far as like the poundages, I never got intimidated by watching someone like yourself or Ronnie thinking that that's what I have to do to be a champion.
Also, he said, I wasn't ego lifting. I watch other people lifting way heavier weights than me, and I said, I'm not doing that. It's not worth the risk. And by lifting lighter weights, getting full mind-muscle connection, he was able to develop his physique without getting the injuries that many others had sustained. Look at the majority of Mr. Olympia competitors. It's not their age that made them lose. It's the fact that they got injured. And so Phil says, use a lighter weight and make it feel heavier. Rather than bench pressing 500 pounds or doing 200-pound rows, why do you need that? Why are you bragging about how much you can lift? Yeah, you're pressing the 180s on the bench press. Why are you bragging about that? Why do you brag about how you can use the 130s and make it feel like it's 180? That way, you're less likely to get injured and more likely to elongate your career.
Right.
Do you think the heavy PED use, or is it just a genetic
Well, it's going to thicken
thing?
your skin. I mean, you're putting oily substance in your body.
And so that's affecting the quality of the skin. You're not able to see as many fibers. And so he says, think of it. You're injecting oils and God knows what in all your muscles to make them swell out. But when you look at those muscles on stage, they don't have the same quality, the same detail, the fibers moving back and forth as you move your body, going from one pose to the next. And as a judge, you absolutely can see this. You see massive shoulders and you're like, well, where's the detail? Where's the definition? Massive? Sure. But I know what's in there, and it's certainly not muscle, and I'm not going to name names because it's almost everyone. But if you abuse this and you take it too far, it's going to hurt your overall look.
Before social media, we could take time off after shows and not care. Kids nowadays, social media is king. So it's going to disrupt their patterns with their protocols.
And so think of it, their protocols, what he's talking about is the cycles they're doing. It's highly related to what they're trying to do. And so if you always have to look amazing because you're filming year round, well, how are you ever going to take time off? And so many of the pros, they don't ever take time off. And so what are the results? We've seen it. People are getting heart attacks. People are not living as long as they used to. And so Phil says, back in the day, you could take time off. You could go off cycle. Not even TRT. We're talking off cycle. Now, I'm not saying all pros should come off. Perhaps TRT is the answer. But if you can't have a period where you're dramatically lowering your doses and getting healthy, then imagine the damage it's going to do to your body. When I used PDs, I went on and I went off.
What was your biggest weight, Phil?
248.
And what was your first Olympia? 2011. Do you remember the weight?
230. 2.
And so Phil Heath at his first Olympia, he weighed 232, but at his max, he only got to 248 pounds. It's only 16 pounds difference. And unlike some of the mass monsters today, that's relatively small. He's about 5'9" tall, and at 248 pounds, it's a lot smaller than many of the guys today. A guy like Nick Walker is several inches shorter and well over 250 pounds. Then we have guys like Big Ramy. They are so huge. But is that really the look we're going for? Should quality not be more important than simply sheer size?
What do you feel is your best?
And so Phil has asked, what was your best look? Many people debate 2011, 2013, and so on. He's like, no, it's actually when I got second. Second to Jay Cutler, 2010. That was my best look of all time. I take that look from 2010, compete against the guys today. I'm winning every single year. I was there when Jay Cutler won and Phil Heath got second. And it was very close. And I could not believe what I was seeing. The quality of the muscle, the detail, the 3D appearance of Phil Heath, unfriggin' real. Jay Cutler, bigger, was very close, but I'm certain it could have gone either way. And so what Phil basically saying is Jay Cutler beat him at his best. 2010, that's my best look. Jay placed ahead of him. I'm sure they both agree it could have gone either way. These guys, you might think they have big egos, but they really don't. They're just telling you the truth. What do you think? Hey, when was your best look? Do you think you could have won? Well, they're asking them the questions. They're giving you their honest answer. And so I don't think Phil Heath is cocky. He's just confident. And why shouldn't he be? He's won so many Olympias.
Nothing beats 2011. 2012 is actually really good. It's just the fact that I don't think people look at 2012 enough.
Later in his career, he started pushing the food more, pushing the size game, perhaps more PDs, and his stomach started to get distended. He developed a hernia, and that essentially ended his career. Had it not been for that, myself, Jay Cutler, believe he would have won 10 Mr. Olympia titles.
You know, Hani had me doing this freaking 315, 20 rep squat shit twice a week for 16 freaking weeks.
Yeah, but your legs improved a lot.
And and I paid the price, but I'm like, that's when I started getting knee issues back. You know, it exacerbated a hernia.
And so Phil Heath is saying, for some Olympias, I paid the price. It hurt me later in my career. Doing 315 for sets of 20 twice a week before the competition, it was too much. Physically, mentally, he was drained. He said his back was hurting, his knees. And so if you train too hard, you push yourself too far, you can only last so long in the sport. Look at Ronnie Coleman. He lifted those incredibly heavy weights. But what happened later in his career? His body broke down. And so please, be careful. And remember, these guys are not natural, which allow you to be stronger than last time, stronger than your body was meant to be. And so if you keep pushing heavier weights, especially if you're ego lifting while using PDs, well, expect to pay the price later in your career.
I mean, I battled Coleman. I worked to get my back bigger for 05, 06, man, but it thickened up my midsection. And if you go back and look at 01, it was kind of like really... everything was kind of tapered. But I think, also eating all those years and, obviously continuous use of drugs.
Yeah.
And so certain body parts grew, for example, his back, but it was at the expense of his waist. Very hard to get that much muscle without getting a larger waistline. After all, there are muscles in your back, in your stomach, and so on, as well as your organs. And if you're eating so much food and lifting such heavier weights, expect your waist to get thicker.
But you guys said it best. I mean, you guys have been around me long enough. You know the sport. Like, on my physique, it's like 3D popping skin a certain way. I didn't have that, and you knew clear as day. And trust me, the way you guys felt, I felt like...
And so one of Phil Heath's only regrets was 2020. He wasn't able to pull off the win. You know what was going on in the world, and so his coach couldn't travel. You've seen Hattie travel to help Chris Bumstead, Derek Lunsford, and so he wanted him to travel to help him peak. To peak and be his absolute best. 2 or 3 weeks, he was looking amazing. But something happened the last few weeks. He wasn't quite able to nail it and placed third at his final Olympia. And so hopefully you enjoyed it. Ending it here. Use code Greg. Don't forget 10% off. You can get Seco bars, protein powders, G-Test, 3-Test, so many exciting supplements at HCLT Sups. Use code Greg, 10% off. Click the link in the description. Subscribe, click the bell button, comment for the algorithm, like the video if you liked it, watch one of the bloops, follow me on Instagram, Greg Doucette IB Pro, and as always, I got the cookbooks, training books, the Circle Diet Book, coaching plans by me and my team, phone consults, and until next time, I am out.